When I spoke out publicly about the matter, the ramifications became even more severe. Junior faculty were warned that even speaking with me would compromise their tenure review. A student-initiated leafleting of students enrolled in the class was stopped by the college's chief academic officer, who physically restrained a student protester. The invited speaker came to my office and taped his business card to my door to make sure I knew that he knew who I was and where I worked. Appeals to the campus police chief for an escort on campus were rejected just before he repeated the motto of the Jewish Defense League, "Never again." On the day of the scheduled debate, the speaker opted to forego his discussion on anti-Semitism and the Holocaust and speak instead against me, whom he described as, quote, "a self-hating leftist Jew," unquote, who had opposed his visit. Campus police, advised to maintain a presence inside the lecture hall, advised by me, that was, to protect humanities block students from the speaker, instead formed a line outside the hall to ensure that a planned counter-demonstration did not materialize. Another group of police officers assembled inside a utility closet as reinforcements. College administrators had also secretly changed the start time of the event to stifle protesters who, concerned about this unannounced time change, feared for my safety. They came to my classroom, interrupted my class, warned me that the event was taking place as they spoke, and offered personally to escort me past the police lines and out the door to my car. In the months that followed, the situation continued to deteriorate. Internal college memos that I had written on the unfolding controversy found their way, along with my picture, to the website of the JDL. My call to the Board of Trustees for an investigation into the source of the leaks failed as well. In a bold move to demonstrate the absolute free speech rights they possessed, faculty re-invited the offending speaker for continuing lectures. By the way, and all I asked on that is that I be told when and where he would be so I wouldn't be there, and I couldn't get that, even that. In a logic class, students heard the JDL leader deliver a 75-minute oration on the subject, Marc Dollinger's cowardice, a reference to my refusal to participate in the Jerry Springer debate with them, which was their answer to how it is that they could solve the issue. The professor in that class then rewrote his final exam so that he could test his students on their response to the question, was Professor Dollinger a coward? For his part in supporting my efforts to protect myself and preserve the most basic standards in higher education, my office mate Milton, you know, the one with the office hours at the beginning, he was removed from his classroom by campus police in the middle of his class, acting on a false claim that he, a black man, had threatened a white woman. And when my dean backed my position with her superiors, she was removed as the block course sponsoring dean, kept out of all information loops, and eventually fired from her position as the college's first woman dean. I'm happy to say she later found successful redress with the United States Commission on Civil Rights, as well as the Equal Opportunity Employment Commission. She did receive a settlement. She was not permitted to say how much it was, but I hope it was a lot. I will say, it says on the bio that I'm a member of the California State Advisory Committee to the United States Commission on Civil Rights. That came as a product of Gretchen's advocacy and her work in the interviews that I did around all this when the federal government investigated it. So I thank her for that. And I cannot thank her here in person because she put her back out yesterday and couldn't drive out for today, but I was hopeful she could be here so she could get some of the public kavod and honor which she deserves. This drama, which lasted for close to 2 years, defied description. In addition to everything else, it was very unusual for a Jewish professor, for a white man, for someone who has benefited from 3 generations of American Jewish life, to have this sort of experience, dafka, Hebrew, just despite, perpetuated by college-level faculty who are supposed to be our nation's intellectual and educational elite. Are you getting the frustration? For a moment, for a brief moment, I was experiencing powerlessness and invisibility. I was walking down the same path that was typically reserved for people of color, for working class people, but certainly not for me. It was a profound experience, sitting now in my office and receiving one by one, Latinos, women, Asian American, and African American faculty, each with their own story of invisibility, of ways that they pushed back against the college at some point in their careers there, and how victimized they became for doing it. Since I didn't even know these stories before, I realized that a big part of powerlessness is also the silence that follows. And a big part of standing up against victimization is gaining the trust and the ear of people who otherwise just prefer to keep their mouths shut. It was a transformational moment for me. I could see perhaps even as clearly as Mario Savio did during the free speech movement of the 1960s, that this university was being used from its faculty, its union, and its senior administration to limit speech, to perpetuate academic and educational fraud on its students, not to mention endanger its undergraduates, all in the name of preventing me and my colleagues from expressing public dissent. When all this happened to me, Bucolic U ended and Ethnic Studies U began. Some achieve radicalness, others have it thrust upon them. This was thrust upon me, and I learned for myself what it was they were all fighting for in the 1960s, how they came to see the university as complicit, and how critical it was to make sure that professors used their platforms in the academy to advocate social change, to protest loudly, even if it's just to protest what's happening in the classroom next door. With this sort of treatment and the firing of my dean and protector, I decided to leave PCC and join the faculty in my current position at SF State. Something quite unusual happened during that summer move from Los Angeles to San Francisco. I morphed. Yes, it's true. In May at Pasadena, I was a self-hating leftist Jew. But come August in San Francisco, I came by fiat, it seemed, a colonial, imperialist, aggressor Zionist. From the darling of the left to its bitter enemy, all in just 90 days. Not to worry, I assure you I was exactly the same person. I just had to know which way to look to see who was after me. On the surface, it would appear that I had returned to Bucolic U at SF State. And in fact, the Department of Jewish Studies at SF State subscribes to that model. Jewish Studies has never embraced the identity project. We are quite clear that we are not on campus to make better Jews. In fact, we have an expressed desire to attract non-Jews to our classrooms, and we take special care to ensure that they are not marginalized by the Sunday school cohort that seem to know the answer to every question in class and can't imagine getting anything but an A in Jewish Studies. Hey, they appeal in office hours. I'm Jewish. How could I get a B in this class? We do that because we believe the university is the place for all students to learn about difference. We are there to teach about Jewishness, not to advocate it. That's the difference in our mind between a Jewish studies professor and a rabbi. We pride ourselves on the fact that our students are graded on the quality of their written work and not based on their religious identification or their political opinions. In our classrooms, we need to be colorblind, gender blind, religious, ethnic, racial, you name it, blind. It's all about learning, about critical analysis, and about sharpening academic skills. Are we good so far? Everyone's agreed on the flip? Okay. I got one more twist coming. It's certainly okay, even encouraged, to challenge students to the point of discomfort when we engage in debate during class. It means that they're pushing themselves to look from a different perspective. But it's never okay for a professor to make a student feel unwelcome in a class because they aren't a member of that group or to grade them harshly because of it. At pro-Israel rallies, we do not participate. We won't go to the microphone and make speeches, and we won't be a part of Israel activism. Every student should know that our role, our identity, is as scholars and teachers, and that is primary in that time and place. Or as I say, I had my day as an undergraduate, now it's your turn. We want students, all sorts of students, to come to our classes and learn with us. We had our days of activism. As members of the faculty, we now have professional responsibilities that are complicated by conflating our personal politics with our educational goals. But that's not easy either. Okay, all right. I understand. I empathize with the frustration expressed by Jewish community leaders who are mad that Jewish studies professors won't get involved in pro-Israel advocacy on campus. I think we probably all agree that even though Jews enjoy great privilege at the university, it isn't absolute. I know that when my students are rallying for Israel on Yom Ha'atzmaut, on Independence Day, when they're facing counter-demonstrators who do not believe that the state of Israel has a right to exist, who believe that Israel is an apartheid state, that they at that moment are standing on the same piece of university real estate that I did protesting anti-Semitism at Pasadena a decade ago. Jews don't experience powerlessness often. But defending Israel on a leftist university campus these days sure feels like it. There's a paradox here. Again, as pro-Israel advocates protest ethnic studies U, when it means that a professor will use his classroom as his or her own political soapbox, but they'll embrace ethnic studies U when they want their Jewish studies professors and Jewish faculty to get out there and engage in identity politics. And that got me thinking. What if I were a professor in 1910 instead of 2010? What if I taught at the turn of the 20th century, and I say this for my father-in-law who's here, Howard, at City University of New York, where so many Eastern European immigrant Jews and their children came to get their families' first college degrees? What if they came to my office hours? What if they came to my office hours, sat there and stared at that rare Jewish intellectual with a PhD, a university appointment, and tenure? Could I be neutral to them? Could I be nothing more than a scholar of history, helping them understand causation from that day's lecture? I don't think so. I would look at them and I'd get a strong sense of communal obligation, a sense that as a Jew, I was pretty darn fortunate to sit in that faculty seat at that place in New York City at that time of tremendous change in American Jewish life, and I think I'd reach out to them. I would speak to them through my own experience, my own understanding of America and what it means and what it could mean for Jews. And if I saw that one of my students was heading down the wrong path, I know I'd speak up. Because, hey, I won the Jewish history lottery. I got a university chair. And with that comes obligation, opportunity, and the responsibility to speak up. It's Ethnic Studies University, no doubt. Because SF State in 2010 is in so many ways the city of University of New York from 1910. When Jewish students come to my office and share stories of fear or intimidation, I sit them down and we talk. We talk about Israel and Palestine. We talk about what it's like to be a white middle-class Jewish kid facing political controversies they've never seen or experienced in their suburban youth. Even as they know about my bucolic U classroom, even though they know that my bucolic U classrooms are sacred in their commitment to neutral political space, they also somehow get the message that if they come to my office hours, they'll get an ethnic studies university-friendly ear, encouragement, and advice. I know it can be tough for an identified Zionist to out themselves at SF State. And I know that when they do, they are marginalizing themselves and could use a kind word. At that moment, I identify with my academic grandfather at the City University of New York. I join Milton, my Pasadena City College office mate, who made sure that his students heard exactly what they needed in order to move themselves forward. Thank you.